What is up, everybody? I hope you guys are all having a fantastic day. I wanted to do something a little bit differently today. Not going to do any sort of deep dive or anything like that or fun interview. If you guys missed it last Friday, I did a pretty interesting interview from one of the OGs in the Hedera community. But Darren Moore Jr. and I had the opportunity to interview a notable venture capitalist and entrepreneur, Tim Draper. He's not a fan of the term billionaire because he said that he wasn't an heir to anything. But I do think that this is a really kind of valuable conversation. This guy is a wealth of knowledge. He talks about his viewpoints on kind of the future of finance and tokenization. Gives some good advice as far as any entrepreneurs out there that may, want to kind of take the leap into building something for themselves. And yeah, that being said, I'm going to play this interview for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. I wanted to also preface real quick here. This Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, I believe we may have the opportunity to interview Melissa or Lisa Oliva, who is at the Small Business OSDBU Office of, I think it's like Small Business Development or under resourced businesses in the United States, on the importance of digital asset innovation in the USA. This is coming under the purview of the NDF, which is built on Constellation technology. But yeah, so certainly not financial advice on our end. Genfinity does have a media relationship with Constellation, but that being said, cannot believe that we may have the opportunity to interview somebody from the United States Department of the Treasury. That is going to be Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. You can go to @GenfinityIO if you're interested in watching that. But I want to share this Draper interview with you. I think it's really interesting. I may also do another video like this where I upload the second portion of this panel, which was a really, really good kind of cross-chain panel with Matthew Niemerg, co-founder of Aleph Zero, Ben Jorgensen, CEO of Constellation, Mei Chan, CEO of Hashpack out of the Hedera ecosystem. If you guys aren't aware, Hashpack obviously, 95% of monthly active users on Hedera. Andre Casterman of XTC and Trade Tech, Fabian Vogelsteller, who's the founder of Luxo. Fabian also invented ERC20 and smart contracts, as well as Rashida Jaja from Nexera, which obviously Alliance Block, the rebrand aspect of Alliance Block. But that was a really great second portion to this as well. That being said, let me stop rambling. I will get into the meat and potatoes here. And shout out to Darren Moore Jr. for 3 months of persistence trying to get Tim Draper onto a podcast for an interview. But I hope you guys enjoy this.
The answer. The answer to the venture capital business was my grandfather was the first Silicon Valley venture capitalist. He did it for about 3 years, and he funded some interesting things. I don't know how whether he was successful or not. He had an amazing career doing a whole bunch of other things. He led the Marshall Plan, economic part of the Marshall Plan after World War II for Germany and Japan. They were pretty successful, and he did he ran the utility in Mexico. He ran the Long Island Railroad. Really extraordinary guy. My dad was a pioneer in venture capital, and he really did help drive venture capital in the Silicon Valley. And so the last thing I wanted to do was be a venture capitalist because it was in my family, but I guess it's in my blood because I wanted to start as an entrepreneur, and I couldn't decide on one focused thing to do, and so I realized that I was better off being a venture capitalist, hedging my bets. Now, since then, after I was able to rise up as a venture capitalist, I started to have some flexibility to be an entrepreneur. And so I started a school for entrepreneurs, Draper University. And we always say that at Draper University, where at Harvard and Stanford, they take you for 4 years and 85% of you will get a job. And at Draper University, we take you for 5 weeks, sometimes 10. And our average graduate creates 7 jobs. So it's and then my venture business started with a loan from the SBIC, and I put that to work, and I almost lost it all because they were calling the loan. I went from their watch list to their dirt list, and I flew back to Washington to try to convince them to hold off on calling the loan. And within about 6 months of that, we had the IPO window opened up, and we had 5 IPOs, and one was Parametric Technology. And I went from being on their dirt list to being venture capitalist of the year. They put me up on the wall, and then so I had a framed picture of myself on the wall of the SBSC program about 6 months after they were about to call my loan. And then I'd been at it about 7 years. I brought in John Fisher. We were fund. Then we brought in Steve Jurvetson, raised another fund, and then we kept growing. And we had like 10, 12. We had 12 partners, and I thought, well, I'll work on the international stuff. And I flew all over the world, setting up venture deals, and funded Baidu and Skype out there in the wild world, and felt it was my mission to spread venture capital and entrepreneurship around the world. And I thought that was enough, because I feel like that's happened. And then Bitcoin showed up, and because the internet was so great, I thought, wow, I just hit it just right. Everything was great. Wow, it was amazing. And then Bitcoin showed up, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is even bigger. And this is a transformation of the entire economy. And so I realized that I had to get ahead of it. And I bought some Bitcoin it was supposed to be at $4 a Bitcoin. Turned out there were all sorts of shenanigans going on, but I did get some Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin was somehow stored at Mt. Gox, and so they disappeared my money somehow. And I thought that was the end of Bitcoin. I thought, oh well, nice experiment. But then I started digging around, and I realized, whoa, this is really important. It's not just for guns and drugs. In fact, guns and drugs didn't really work out because the blockchain keeps perfect records. It's for remittance. It's for paying people internationally. It's for bringing people who are unbanked or unbankable into the global economy. And I realized this has been so important. And the decentralized part of it meant that being centralized was a flaw in the economic system. So central banks, any currency issuances by political people were flaws in an otherwise pretty nice system. And so Bitcoin solved that with its decentralization. Now, people ask me, well, why didn't you invest in FTX? We passed on them twice. We passed on BlockFi. We passed on, because we saw 1,000 people doing the exact same thing, and it was all centralized. And that's why I became such a lover of Bitcoin and other decentralized tokens and currencies. If they're centralized, it's okay, but it's really got to have a purpose. It's got to have a reason to be, like a United Miles or something. So that was a long answer. Are you guys still there?
Well, thanks for the answer. It's interesting. It's like the ultimate form of wealth creation is entrepreneurship. But I was searching for previous interviews you're on, and everything said billionaire Tim Draper. And I noticed, like, the first thing I think of when a billionaire is like a Monty Burns or like Rothschilds. And the first interview I clicked on, it was about spreading positivity and how your failures can become successes. So I just wanted to know, like, how your perspective has kind of shaped your life.
Oh, well, money comes and goes, and the number billion, is I guess a point that people like to focus on. But I kind of just think of it as like, hey, I'm doing what I can for the world, and I always want the businesses I backed are successful because they're not doing anybody any favors if they're not. And so I've been fortunate that I've been able to back some of the, things that have become common names in the world, Tesla and SpaceX. Tesla was one guy when I backed it. It wasn't even Elon, it was Martin Eberhard. And SpaceX was Elon, and he already had made huge progress launching rockets. But the moment after we wrote that check to SpaceX, the next 3 rockets he launched blew up, gone. But he stuck with it, and he's so amazing. And then Hotmail really completely transformed the world, made everybody able to communicate with anybody else for free. And then Skype did it in audio and then in video. And I think that those are 2 really transformative companies that we were able to, we were the seed investor in both of them. And so I just love doing what I do. And as long as I can keep making money doing it, I'll just keep at it. And it's an exciting world out there, and it's a world that anyone can transform, and that's why Draper University is so valuable. We've attracted students from 102 different countries. We call them entrepreneurs, but they're our students, and now it's harder to get into than pretty much almost any school in the world. I can't say in the world because IIT Bombay takes 1 out of 100,000 something for their computer science program. But it's that allows me to kind of keep my ear to the ground and my feet on the ground as I evaluate new companies. I look at what I'm 65, what the 28-year-olds are thinking. So that's kind of what I do, and yeah, it's just a number. People glorify it, but it's.
We were.
Sorry.
I'm good.
I don't actually like the term billionaire because I wasn't an heir to $1 billion. But they like to do that, and they. I also. I kind of bow down to the great entrepreneurs of the world who've transformed our lives. I mean, in 4 hours, because of Jeff Bezos, in 4 hours I can get a toothbrush, just delivered to me. I can, because of Uber, I can be lost anywhere, and as long as I know what my destination is, I can get there. These are really transformative companies, and they've done extraordinary things for us. This iPhone, my God, the thing I'm talking into, this is completely transformative. I mean, you've got to have lived a long life to have seen how important all these entrepreneurs are for our society. So I bow down to the entrepreneurs that have done these extraordinary things for our world. And I also bow down, the MySpaces of the world or whatever, the ones who didn't quite get there. They were the ones who, they were pioneers. They tried stuff. It didn't quite happen, but they moved the ball along so Facebook could happen. It was that kind of. So I think we've got a society that sort of plays up the riches of these people, but not the riches they've created for all of us.
Yeah, 100%. We were watching. It's interesting. You talk about kind of the evolution of technology and looking at distributed ledger and blockchain and digital assets. Looking back, you did an interview with Gary Gensler in like 2020 or 2021, and you go over kind of the status of technology adoption from these incumbents and the traditional status quo. And it's a really interesting video. I'll try to pin that up to the top if we can find it, or Darren, if
you did deep research. Yeah, we were on a panel in front of the Fed. We were on a panel talking about Bitcoin in front of the Fed, and I was so excited about it. I was saying, "Hey guys, you guys are centralized. It's not going to play well for you. Go, figure out how you can adapt to this new world." And Gary was much more reserved on all that stuff. But I thought he was going to be a good choice for the SEC, but I didn't realize he would create a dark cloud over all innovation. I think we've got the wrong administration for all this. I was pushing very hard for Nikki Haley because she's a free marketer and very bright, and I thought she'd be a fantastic candidate. And I think this one was kind of set up for the rematch. There were too many things going in their favor. I mean, if you were the head of the Republican Party and you knew Nikki Haley would blow out Biden by 17 points, and you knew that Trump was about an even shot, why would you immediately back Trump unless there was some insider thing going? He does have kind of a cult following. And I didn't understand it until I watched some Fox News. So we've got a problem in the U.S. because we're losing the innovators. They're going to Dubai. They're going to El Salvador. They're going to start going to Argentina because that guy's such a free market thinker. Going to Uruguay. They're going to the free places on the earth.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in that interview, Tim, where you talk about these phases too, and I'm just curious where you think we're at with these phases, and I think it's probably a multifaceted question because you could tackle that with how blockchain and distributed ledger affects payments, or you can tackle it in the digital identity stuff. But what I found really interesting is you talk about just this process where at first the incumbents reject it and they just dismiss it and they say the technology it's nothing. And then it gets too big to ignore, and then they fight back. And then you start seeing lawsuits and the legal action stuff. And then, eventually the technology is adopted. I guess the question that I have for you is, where do you think that we're at along that journey of adoption with blockchain and distributed ledger?
Oh, I think they're starting to accept it. They've been fighting it a long time. And that's why Biden is so out of touch, because everyone is starting to recognize that, hey, this is better. Bitcoin is not just better gold; it's better currency, and they're fighting it to the nail because they like the control they have. At least in the U.S., they like the control they have over the central bank, and so they've been putting up barriers wherever they could. But this is a snowball. It's just coming. It's a drumbeat. We've got a drumbeat going, and the drumbeat just continues over and over and over. And it's the Bitcoin drumbeat. Maybe I should have written that song. I wrote a song called the Bitcoin Hustle, which then I turned to the Bitcoin Shuffle, and now it should be the Bitcoin drumbeat, because it is coming. Feel it, and the beat just keeps going. And think of all the things that hit Bitcoin over the years, and it just keeps coming. It's clearly needed around the world, and where some governments are going, no, we like our central bank. Other governments are going, whoa, this can transform our economy. And arguably, that genius in El Salvador could end up taking a country that was one of the poorest in the world, deeply in debt to the IMF, and transform it into one of the richest countries in the world and be able to pay off the IMF with a blink. I think this, apparently it's gone also from most dangerous to one of the safest countries in the world too. It's amazing how a leader can really make a difference, or really either screw it up or make it great. Unfortunately, we got a lot of friction in the U.S. for any one leader to screw it up too much, but they sure are trying.
100%. Darren, I know that you probably have a question too.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you think central bank digital currencies are a reaction to the crypto world, or do you think the governments want the utility of instant taxation, the elimination of privacy, instant sanctions?
The government bureaucrats, I know, they don't want anything to change. They want to go to work, do their thing, come back from work, and then 5 o'clock rolls around, they're out. The politicians, they just want popularity. And so they will jump to front of the parade as soon as they feel like the wind is going in a new way. And I guess that's, one definition of a leader, a politician who is the middle person. Like as soon as just before 51% decide this is a good idea, that politician jumps in front. So I think that the U.S. government has clearly not played this well. Bill Clinton played it very well when people said, you got to tax the internet, you got to regulate the internet, you got to whatever. And he just said, well, let's see how this thing goes. And by seeing how that thing went, he has allowed trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of value to be created. The greatest companies in the world were all now U.S. companies. And that's all because he backed off. Well, now, if the same thing's going to happen with Bitcoin, we're going to get the $10 trillion businesses out of Bitcoin. We're in a bit of a pickle here in the U.S. because our regulators are stepping up before they even know what could happen with it. And they have, they've done it all wrong. It's like they embraced FTX, which was centralized, and they have pushed away all these really cool tokens. And they've spread fear throughout the innovation group because they're saying, no, the SEC can come after me. I'm not going to do that. And they're not allowing innovation. And I think that the countries that do encourage innovation are going to be years ahead of the ones who get in the way. So I think you're going to see a transformation of wealth. And it usually does. It flies from the control-based countries to the free country. So countries that create a bunch of rules and regulations, they usually die on the vine. China was booming when it was free, and now they've got that weak man as a leader, and he's creating all sorts of rules and regulations and telling everybody what to do, and he is stalling that what was an incredible economy. So governments that set very clear rules and trust their people and set them free are the ones who build the biggest economy. And that's where it solves all the other problems. They get plenty of jobs. They have fewer mental health problems. They have fewer people on the streets. They have they create more wealth for their society. They create nicer structures to live in, better health care, better education. All those things happen when you trust people and set them free with very clear rules. When they're nebulous, it's regulation by enforcement. Hey, you can't really do anything new or we'll come slap you down. That flattens an economy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, Tim, if you look at, and I'm curious your thoughts on like just investment thesis and philosophy and how, from your stance, it's changed and evolved over the years. And mainly in the context of, we look at blockchain and DLT and all these things, and there's a lot of like technologies that are starting to seemingly converge into blockchain and DLT, whether it's AI or some of the digital identity stuff with zero knowledge. What are your kind of thoughts around the ways that these technologies converge, and how do you look at that from like an investment standpoint, or how would you look at that from an investment standpoint?
Well, I'm doing a lot of the layer 2 things, the things that are making Bitcoin more usable and that kind of thing. I don't do, as the first to jump into all the future of finance, the fintech business. And it really paid off well for me. But now so many entrepreneurs are creating fintech businesses that we feel like there's no real added value for us to get involved in that. But we do spend, and also they over time they will commoditize. So what we like to look at are those entrepreneurs that are sort of cutting new ground or allowing people to do more things. We're trying to transform an entire global economy that's been built over hundreds of years it's been built through the banking system now we're trying to transform the entire global economy. It's sort of has to happen one step at a time. I had not anticipated DeFi being a big deal because I just thought, well, we got a new currency. Let's make it easy to spend at retail. So I backed OpenNode, and let's make it something that that works with smart contracts. So we backed a bunch of those, and now since NFTs are such a thing, I think ordinals are potentially going to be really important to verifying everything from assets to people to artwork to whatever. So a lot of great things are happening. There is an enormous amount of creative activity going around Bitcoin. And I think it's similar to when Microsoft was, Microsoft had this platform, their operating system. That platform was a really exciting place to be. And people were building a lot of interesting things on it. But only a few really rose to the top. And one was Lotus 123 and one was WordPerfect. And Microsoft just went and they said, okay, well, we're going to compete with those two. Go ahead, play on our on our platform, but we're gonna copy you if you figure out something that's really successful.
I just wanted to preface, briefly, for those of you guys that may not be aware of. Tim says a ton of stuff in this whole interview. And a lot of it's kind of under the purview of Bitcoin or scaling solutions for Bitcoin, but I think that there's parallels that we can draw across a lot of these different technologies, a lot of layer ones, things like that. But when he mentions ordinals, I'm sure maybe some of you guys have seen ordinals. Essentially, what ordinals are in a really simplistic way is as these blocks are mined through Bitcoin, and it's not just on Bitcoin. You have aspects of, they're called inscriptions. But as blocks are mined on the Bitcoin blockchain, there's basically leftover space for data. So there's, not all of the space. This is really simplistic the way I'm trying to describe this. Not all the space is basically used as mining occurs on Bitcoin and as each subsequent block is mined. Therefore, there's data that you can inscribe directly on the blockchain. You can think of which types of data you would want to basically live forever on the blockchain. What types of things can integrate, whether it's identity or whether it's, pictures or art or whatever. That's what he's talking about when he's talking about ordinals, is really kind of the inscription aspect, actually inscribing data directly on the blockchain. And you do see this on other chains too. Hedera has hashinals. I thought I saw some stuff on the XRPL, but I don't think it was technically inscriptions. But there's a lot of ecosystems. And this kind of ties... I'll have to do this at some point. I know we did a space on hashinals, which is basically just a description of inscriptions. But it gets into the IPFS stuff and where the actual data is stored versus, is that data going to be there forever? Is there a potential that data can be lost? Where does the provenance stuff come in? What if that data doesn't get queried for a long period of time? Does it become, again, lost? Versus actually inscribing data directly on chain or directly on hash graphs or directly on whatever. And I think that if you look at this space, what we've seen, I know I'm rambling now, this has happened consistently over and over again. As you see little inklings of technology, the ordinal stuff is, it was really big for certain communities, and really big for the space. But a lot of other communities don't understand it, so they don't necessarily pay attention to it. And then a couple of years down the line, when it becomes whatever it's going to become, then people were like, oh yeah, it totally made sense. It's huge. That's a huge, area of technology and development for blockchain and DLT. So I would pay attention to the inscription stuff. I would pay attention to not only ordinals, but whatever's going on with inscriptions across all these ecosystems. So sorry to rant. I'll continue here.
And I think that's what's happened. A lot of experimenting on a lot of different tokens. And now they're looking or saying, now we're going to put the most important ones on Bitcoin. And I think that's sort of the next leg here. Industries go through a cycle. They also, there's also sort of a hype cycle, and the hype cycle goes up in the form of a cursive I and then into an S at the end, where first it goes into this cursive I with a hype monster at the top of the I. That might have been like 2017 for Bitcoin. And then
I wanted to share this stat with you guys real quick, just because I thought of it. So, again, this is just the example that we used for what goes on Hedera for inscriptions. But you can certainly look at any chain, any ecosystem, where I do think ordinals is huge on Bitcoin. I mean, you guys have known me for years in this space. I do feel like there's going to be this kind of leveraging of different networks for what different networks are good for. And here's an example. So like Hedera, this was like back in April, 100,000 inscriptions. And instead of ordinals, it's called hashinals. And this is just an example of how much it would cost to inscribe on Bitcoin, directly on the Bitcoin blockchain, using ordinals versus inscribing on Hedera. 3.1 gigabytes of data inscribed on ordinals. The cost as of April 20th would have been $5.5 million. 3.1 gigabytes of inscriptions on Hedera through HCS and hashinals. The cost would be $1,000. So where I do think that there is massive potential across all these ecosystems to inscribe data directly on chain or directly on Hashgraph or whatever the underlying terminology we use is, this hopefully paints maybe a little bit of a picture of how some of these things might play into each other, where why wouldn't you could still build on Bitcoin and build on ordinals, but you can leverage a network that's maybe cheaper, faster, or whatever it may be to do certain portions of tasks. So, and then obviously you want the provenance stuff and the tracking and the real, like, you want the proof that something actually exists where it's supposed to exist. But I'm saying, why not leverage chains or ecosystems for what they're kind of what their strong suits are. So anyways, enough rant.
It comes down and people go, oh, what's anybody going to use this for? But it's a little like what happened to the internet. Went up in a big hype, the dot-com bubble. And then it came down and people were saying, well, Google creates viruses and I'm not going to put my credit card on Amazon. And there were so many things coming out. And then those companies became bigger than anybody ever imagined by about 100 times. I think the same thing's now happening with entrepreneurship around Bitcoin. A lot of great innovation, and those companies, I think, 10 years from now are going to be the $10 trillion companies.
I've noticed a trend of people embracing socialism and communism, and it's just, are you concerned about some of these trends? I noticed a lot more younger people are very pro-socialism or very pro-communism. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on that? And do you have an exit plan in case the United States gets overrun by something like that?
Yes. I mean, yes, I'm always thinking. But I think the young people are starting to react to that socialism feeling that was happening. They were all thinking, oh, yeah, be socialist. And then, a few of them maybe made a trip to Cuba and they realized that was the stupidest thing they ever said. Socialism, only benefits the few at the top. And communism, same thing. They're both the same thing. It's like all of us the same. But then, of course, you kill inventiveness and the motivation, the drive of all the people on the planet. And that's really the end of the global economy. And then you create huge starvation across the planet. Think of where you get your food and how many people touch it and where that comes from. Think of where you get your housing and how many people are involved in that. How many people are involved in getting you clothes? How many people are involved in keeping your health? That would shut down. There would be no motivation to do good work in a socialistic or communistic environment. And that's what's happening. South Korea and North Korea had a demilitarized zone between them after the war. And in North Korea, they took on socialism and communism, and a dictatorship, and they told everybody what to do. And that's basically socialism. It tells everybody what to do, and then they do it. And in South Korea, it was a free market, open system, free speech, open border, capitalistic democracy. And what happened? Okay, 70 years later, it's about 3 generations. You now have South Koreans making 460 times. The average South Korean makes 460 times what the average North Korean makes. And the average South Korean is now 4 inches taller than the average North Korean. The average North Korean has enough food for 9 days out of a month. The average North Korean gets counted out by the government 24 grains of corn, and that's considered lunch. Is that what those people really want? Those people saying, oh, we should have socialism? What are they thinking? They have no idea what a disaster it is and how corrupting, ruin it of a country.
We still have you there, Tim, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you hear me?
Yes, we heard you. I at the very, very tail end thought that we might have lost you there, but we did hear you. And yeah, great question. Great question, Darren. Appreciate throwing all kind of the big picture stuff in. On kind of the topic of the big picture stuff, Tim, I'm curious from your stance. Now we're seeing tokenization, and really kind of start to take form and real world adoption of a lot of these like funds being tokenized, things like that. When you look at how big this space is going to get, I mean, what is your kind of anticipation lead you towards? So, I mean, you can think about the derivative markets and everything else that come into play, but medium to long term, where do you think blockchain and distributed ledger, Bitcoin, digital assets go as far as like market share? Is the world going to be tokenized?
Oh, yeah. Why? I mean, I think about Proppy going and tokenizing real estate so that you have everybody knows who owns what. Today we pay this total friction, which is I don't have to. Maybe it's much blockchain. Everybody knew what everybody owned everywhere around the world. I think that's going to be a really valuable thing long term. And then I think the key here to great success in tokenization is going to be identity. I think making sure you know who it is.
We got him.
Sorry, I'm getting a few calls. I think it's going to be a really big part of our world. I think anything that's on a database is going to be tokenized eventually. And I think, we're going to have the blockchain was a really extraordinary creation. I think that's going to open up all sorts of new fields and more trust around the world, and more trust breeds more freedom. So that's always good for me.
Darren?
Yeah, so I wanted to just know about my toughest experiences have kind of shaped my outlook on life, and some of my failures have later turned.
I don't hear you guys.
Can you hear us now, Tim?
Yeah, I hear you.
Darren, you try to talk. Let's see if Tim can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me all right now? Can you hear me all right now, Tim?
I don't think Tim can hear you, Darren. I'm curious. Darren, hop down and then hop back up. Tim, you can still hear me though, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I think where Darren was going is some of our toughest experiences in life often shape, kind of the way that we interact in life, kind of moving forward, kind of learning from failures. And some of those kind of failures sometimes end up turning into like blessings and successes and things like that. Have you had experiences like that throughout your career? And have you kind of seen that type of stuff resonate to you, where something that you looked at as a failure in the past may have turned into new opportunities or branching out into different things that actually ended up kind of being a success?
Oh, absolutely. We backed a company called Upside Magazine a long, long time ago. It was the first tech periodical ever, first one that did any work talking about the tech industry or any of that stuff. And it was amazing. But it gave me a window in what a pain it was to ship actual physical magazine. And when it was possible to just spread a magazine through the internet, I knew that was going to be, and probably helped us in thinking about building Hotmail I tried to actually invest Yahoo, but we also
Did we lose? I got you back, right, Tim?
Yep, I'm here.
I think we end up breaking up here at the end, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, can't really believe that we had the opportunity to interview somebody like Tim Draper. Huge shout out to Darren. And I mean, you hear it from a guy that was kind of at the ground level of a lot of these different companies dealing in emerging tech back in the the boom of the internet, and it's always interesting to kind of hear that resonate as far as distributed ledger blockchain is concerned, tokenization. Asking Tim if he feels like the world's going to be tokenized, and somebody with that that type of experience and track record in traditional finance. I mean, to say that absolutely the majority of this world is going to be tokenized is just pretty interesting. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and would love the opportunity to interview somebody like Tim again, or to interview Tim again. Again, we are interviewing, I think, United States Department of the Treasury this Thursday at Genfinity IO on Twitter. So if you guys have time, check that out. And that being said, I'll try to upload this this other space that we did at some point today or tomorrow as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I will talk to you when I talk to you. Thanks. Bye.